Hello everybody, my name is Kit from the Bren System. This channel is Wumble, the channel of the Bren System, and today I have for you, our humble audience, a tale of woe, a tale of tragedy and betrayal, a tale of unbridled midwit stupidity. This story goes way back to 9 years ago. On December 8th, 2017, by the gods, we were 19 years old. It was really that long ago, huh? Like, we weren't even a professional yet. We were a student. And this has been going on for this fucking long. I am exhausted. I am done. I'm going to walk backwards into the sea. Anyway, in early December of 2017, a bright-eyed 19-year-old Bren System decided to make a 10-minute YouTube video explaining something very simple. Explaining why an artist using shortcuts and choosing to work smarter rather than harder does not inherently downgrade the value of their labor. Bren was a young student with a much smaller fan base at the time, working a day job to make ends meet, and then in the hours after its long shifts at the ankle pain factory, was putting in the work to become a professional illustrator. Its relatively small following at the time responded very well to this video. 100% like ratio, the comments were in agreement. Everybody who watched that video, which happened to be more than 100 people, agreed unanimously that an artist choosing to use reference photos, copy-paste, or even just tracing a little bit here and there was not a sign that that artist was a hack. And now, dear viewers, we flash forward to May 6th, 2026. On a bright and sunny early spring day, having recently recovered from a bout of serious illness, I was bedbound for several days with influenza. It was really painful. The Bren System picked up a half-finished work in progress for a slightly more complex illustration. Coincidentally, in the background of this video, you will see us putting further work into that illustration. It was going really well. The creative flow was flowing, and the art block that it had been struggling with for months seemed to be finally breaking. But then it just so happened to hit a hurdle. Bren knew how to draw a hand. Bren also knew how to draw leather. But something that Bren wasn't very good at was drawing a hand in a complex pose wearing a leather glove. It made a few attempts to get it right, before eventually pulling out the big guns. Something occurred to it, that it owns a pair of gloves that are a very similar cut to this pair of gloves, and in order to get the shapes right, it could simply take a reference photo. You know, as it has learned over the many years that it has been a practicing artist, this is what you do. And so it put in the work. It put on the gloves. It set up the camera. It took a photo after multiple tries that finally fit the vibe it was going for, and then used that photograph as reference. But then something very funny occurred to it, that it felt kind of ridiculous doing that. I mean, yes, it's something that all artists do, but isn't it also something that makes an artist feel a little bit goofy? And it remembered this monologue from one of its favourite films, the Frida Kahlo biopic starring Salma Hayek, in which Frida Kahlo muses about how being an artist is something she takes pride in, but also kind of self-deprecates a little bit. It thought, oh, I've got an idea for a very funny and witty video I could put online about how silly it feels sometimes to be an artist. How we have to pull out crazy techniques that make us feel a bit goofy in order to get over little hurdles. The video in question looked like this.
I don't give a shit what the world thinks. I was born a bitch. I was born a painter. I was born fucked. But I was happy in my way. You did not understand what I am. I am love. I am pleasure. I am essence. I am an idiot. I'm an alcoholic. I am tenacious.
And then, to its surprise, the video took off. It got way more attention than it was expecting. And then, something funny happened. Okay, I'm gonna drop the bit now. That was really fun, but from now on, kayfabe off. I just thought that the narrator stick would be a funny way of introducing this. There is something darkly hilarious about a topic of discourse coming to a pretty unanimous conclusion 9 years ago, only to be revived again, and coincidentally during a time where people who work in that field have recently become a more vocal enemy to a very wealthy and powerful group of people who are trying their hardest to politically destroy our livelihood in order to make a profit for themselves. Now, I would encourage people to go back and watch that old video, but quite frankly, the equipment and the skill level that we were working with when it comes to video making, no, don't. Instead, I'll give you a quick summary of what that video kind of concluded, and then I'll add some further thoughts onto it, because it has been a while and things have gotten worse. So the basic message of that old video we made was that tracing, copying and pasting, and, just general shortcuts were perfectly okay. We argued that if you are a professional artist trying to meet deadlines or trying to work faster, these things could help you achieve that. But also that if you were a student who was trying to build up an internal visual library, these things were necessary for the learning process. Ultimately, drawing from life, or photo bashing your own reference, or even just copying and pasting a base to draw onto, or in the case of our little video that blew up recently, using your own reference that you photographed in order to fill in a section of a work that you are having a bit of trouble with. All of these things are done all the time by artists of every skill level, and I still stand by that conclusion. Especially now that I have actual work experience as an illustrator. When I had clients who were paying me good money to put some work into a comic, and I was doing, say, the sketching, or the line work, or the flat color. I say it in the past tense because I don't do commissions full-time anymore. Sometimes they would want me to draw something that I really hadn't drawn before. A scorpion. Scorpions aren't native to my country. I had to look up some photographs of scorpions in order to get them right. An anatomically correct brain. How often do you see those? I looked up some medical photos. If it weren't for the practice of using reference, drawing from life, and even the occasional little bit of tracing, I would not have been able to make it as a full-time freelance artist. I would not have been able to retain my client base if I wasn't efficient and consistent. But then again, I don't really have a right to talk about that, because according to @the_superior Harurara, I'm a hack who was never worth the money, and a huge narcissist, and obviously somebody who takes immense pride in having a wank to an anime animal girl, enough so that they are willing to have that be a defining aspect of their online identity, knows what a real art is when they see it. So examples from my own career aren't gonna cut it, are they? Let me just give you another. And this time, I'll leave absolutely no room for doubt. In the year 2006, a film adaptation of the acclaimed sci-fi horror novel A Scanner Darkly was released. It didn't necessarily succeed in the box office, but it got widely positive reviews. One of the things it received praise for was the thing that made it stand out amongst other horror movies of its era. The entire film was animated. The animation style that the film used was called rotoscoping. Now, all of the animators in the audience are currently leaping out of their seats with joy at the mention of rotoscoping, because it really is incredibly cool. Rotoscoping is a style of animation that functions entirely on the process of tracing. So what they did is they had all of the actors actually perform the movement and the visuals, and then they had a team of animators trace over it. And this wasn't some, low budget film either, obviously, if they could afford to hire animators, if they could afford to hire Keanu Reeves, Woody Harrelson, Robert Downey Jr. and Winona Ryder. No, this movie cost millions and also made millions. The animation style elevated the horror, because the vibe that's created by rotoscoping is very unique. It produces this uncanny valley kind of tense energy. The animation contributed heavily to the success of the film. So again, professional artists don't trace? Since when? This film was nominated for a Hugo. If you're a person who enjoys like horror and thriller films, I really recommend you watch it, because this film is genuinely unsettling and scary. It's very effective. And you can see in every frame of rotoscoping how much hard work went into cultivating a very specific, tense and unnerving atmosphere. You know, it's really good. It's really good. So no, when I defend these practices, I'm not defending myself. I'm not being narcissistic. Because this isn't about me. This is about every artist in the industry, from small-time freelancers like me, who only really work on small indie projects, to the people working in major animation studios. Even stylized animation often, frequently uses live-action footage as reference, you know, so they can get the movements right.
Light flicks, brittle wrist cornucopia, still life waiting on a vista to utopia. Mr. Satan pausing in the hotel scallops, fuck with the timing of the whole swell ballad.
We've never claimed to be big time, we know that we're small time, but we also know that attempts to belittle the hard work of artists are insidious. They're insidious because this shit is what people like Peter Thiel want you to believe. These AI bros want you to believe that an artist using reference or tracing is just as bad as someone using an LLM, so maybe they deserve to lose their job to an LLM. And if you still don't believe me about that, if you still don't believe this is a political issue, let me reassure you, it is that deep, and it has been that deep since before World War II. Because the Nazi regime in Germany, back then, did this as well. They literally created an art exhibition which was titled Degenerate Art, and they included artwork made by marginalized artists. They exhibited it in a mocking way to basically prove, in big quotations, that there is such a thing as a superior artist, an artist who is pure and just better than other people. And coincidentally, all of the artists that they held up as such just happen to be their political allies. Art is political, and it always has been. And any and all discourse that intends to belittle the labor of artists exists for a political reason. The myth of the perfect artist who can literally recall anything just from seeing it once. There are very few artists who can actually do that, and when they can, it's considered extraordinary, and there's a reason. The reason is even people who have been drawing for years and years find it really hard to draw without reference. And this elitist idea that only people who can do the extraordinary have the right to pick up a pencil is categorically and demonstrably absurd, no matter how you look at it. The reason why I spent years of my life doing commissions full-time, and the reason why I still sell my artwork, is because this is all I want to do, because I'm passionate about it. Not to mention, I have physical disabilities that make it impossible for me to continue working ordinary jobs. That joke I made earlier about the ankle pain factory, that was based on experience. When I used to work jobs that required physical labor, I would be in agony because I have this genetic incurable disability that makes it really hard for me to be on my feet all day. So there are very few, accessible jobs for someone like me. It just so happens that this is the one skill that I have that doesn't send me into flare-ups. It also just so happens to be the only thing that I'm really passionate about in life. And many artists who choose to make this their profession feel the same, because a lot of us are not making an extraordinary amount of money. In fact, The arts are extremely underpaid, to quite an infamous degree. That's why there are unions, guilds, be for real. Nobody becomes a writer or an illustrator because it makes them a lot of money very easily. Hell, I bring those ones up because those are things I've done professionally, but there are many other creative fields that applies to. It applies to most of them. And I'm just one guy. Well, actually, to be fair, we're a system, so we're like 40 guys. Joking. Functionally speaking, we are just one guy in a very big industry. This isn't something I care about just because it affects me. It's something I care about because it affects everybody who does what I do. Artists need to stand on business. And no, I'm not being smug and elitist when I bring up the fact that I've worked as an artist for a really long time. I state my credentials because we live in a world that only really understands and listens to voices that are speaking from positions of authority. I wish I could just speak my takes without having to mention that I went to one of the top 10 art schools in my country, or that I have sold my work and been commissioned for my work for years. But if I have to embarrass myself by bringing up and listing all my credentials in order to be listened to so I can stand up for my community, I'm gonna do that because I'm not afraid to be cringe. Yes, it's cringe when somebody in a marginalized group stands up for themselves. Do you know why you've been conditioned to find that cringe? Do you know why when someone brings up that they have further education in a topic, you've been conditioned to find that cringe? It's anti-intellectualism, baby. Yeah. I want to conclude this video by simply encouraging people to think critically. When you feel like a knee-jerk reaction to something, stop and think and ask yourself, is that really what I believe, or is that just a momentary emotion? Does that really line up with how I see the world, or is it just how somebody with a lot of power who's been making a lot of propaganda lately wants me to think? Because being fucking for real, none of you are going to benefit from artists having our labor degraded. Because chances are, statistically speaking, if you're a person in the world, you also work, or at least labor, in some field that is underappreciated. If this is my proletariat, we are screwed. You are a working class person pointing the finger at another working class person who also labors hard with their hands, who also puts their blood, sweat, and tears into the work they do. And you're telling that person they're nothing. It is that deep. It is that deep. Because if my labor is now worthless just because I work smarter rather than harder, we are all worthless. Stop glorifying unnecessary struggle. Stop belittling the labor of other people who are struggling just as much as you are. Because yes, even people like me who have had some success as artists struggle. We struggle. And everyone who is in struggle should be supporting each other and encouraging each other. And no, that's not quote-unquote toxic positivity. It's called having a soul and having compassion for your fellow human being. Thank you.